Food is arguably the most important resource in Age of Empires 2, but all we see in game is just a single set of numbers. Throughout this series, we will be diving in to see exactly what foods each civilization prepared and ate, and how well I can recreate these recipes. This is Meals of Empires. There are two themes for Georgian cuisine. The first is their location in the Caucasus Mountains. The Georgian people are very used to foraging and using what ingredients are readily available there and growing there, just because transportation into the mountain range can be quite difficult. So there's a large culture of not really following the recipes or being very willing to adapt based off what ingredients are readily available at that time of year. The second theme is that the Georgian territory throughout the medieval period and beforehand were occupied by a variety of other larger civilizations that kind of used or asked for tribute from the Georgian dutchies or provinces, whatever governance they had at that time. The three recipes we're looking at today are Pkhali, which is walnuts plus some veggies all mixed into a paste, almost like a pate. The second is Satsivi. It's almost like the equivalent to hummus for the Georgians, but instead of garbanzo beans or chickpeas, instead we're using, again, walnuts. And then the last one is Pelamushi, which is a grape pudding, and we're gonna decorate that with walnuts just to make it all have another central theme, because that's what cooking's all about, is just finding these themes. And why not walnuts? All right, we are starting by making the Pkhali by just wilting the spinach down. I already have some water that's fairly hot, but while that's going, we can start on the spice mix. So there's quite a few different Georgian spice mixes, but they do include a lot of modern ingredients in the modern versions of that. The two spices that were not available to the Georgians in the medieval period are marigold flowers that are native to Central America and red pepper that everyone likes to put in their dishes in modern times, again, native to North America or Central America. But instead, we do have a few different spices. The only issue is a lot of these Georgian spice mixes use varieties of the spices that are native to the Caucasus Mountains. So fenugreek is one ingredient that you can either get in seed or in leaf form. The leaves we used in for the gurjaras in the flatbread. The fenugreek species they use in Georgia is called blue fenugreek, and they use generally the leaves. But again, that's very limited to the Caucasus range. So gitsruli is the local caraway variety that's up there. I don't really know. It's said to have a very iconic flavor, but I haven't seen it described anywhere. So we're just going to use caraway seeds instead. A lot of the spice mix is really down to what ingredients you can find and trying to do your best with getting these ingredients. So we're going to mix all these spices together. We're going to mix it also with some garlic, and that's going to be included in both our Pkhalis, both the spinach and the beet Pkhali, as well in our Satsivi we're going to make later with the cauliflower. There's going to be so much grinding in this recipe. All the walnuts get ground up except for the Pelamushi at the end. So I'm going to get my upper body exercise in right now. Coriander is from the Mediterranean, a little bit less because I want the fenugreek flavor to come through a bit more. Yeah, caraway seeds have definitely a unique flavor. It's maybe a little bit of licorice, but it's more like a little bit closer to maybe a poppy or something like that. And I think it's used extensively in the Georgian spice mixes. There's quite a few of them. One of the new ingredients that they use is called Imeretian saffron, and that's used to reference neither saffron nor an herb that's from the region of Imeretia in Georgia, but is actually marigold found from Central America. And they say instead to use saffron, which is what I'm going to use. Let me get the spinach out real quick. We can let the spinach just drain a little bit more. So here I have 6 cloves for each of the elements that will be taking the spice mix. So you could say the spice mix is garlic dominant, but garlic I find always is reduced in flavor the longer you cook some of these dishes. So I'm always happy to add more garlic than most people. One of the spice mixes I found was called Svanetti salt, I believe. So it's a salt mix that includes a lot of the spices that I mentioned earlier. The Savan region that's noted in Age of Empires or represented in Age of Empires by the Savan Towers. But unlike how it's represented in Age of Empires 2, I think in the scenario editor, Savan Towers are their own building. Savan Towers historically were actually attached to houses, and they were just like a little defensive structure next to the house. So walnuts are the other component of the Pkhali, along with the vegetables and the spice mix. I have measured out 100 grams of each, and I'm going to take 50 grams for the spinach and 50 grams for the beets, and then the other 100 grams I have laid out are for the Satsivi later with the cauliflower. The caraway seeds are very aromatic right now. That's mostly what I smell.
The word Iberia was used to refer to two different areas of Europe during the Antiquity and Medieval period. The first and more well-known area is the Iberian Peninsula, where we have modern Spain and Portugal, but the Greeks also referred to the early Georgian kingdom of Kartli as Iberia.
So we're going to take maybe a third of that and add it to our crushed almonds over here, a third of the spice mix. Ooh, I just remembered one thing I didn't add to the spice mix yet. The thing that Colin always forgets. Salt. All right, can't forget the salt. I'm gonna wring spinach out with my hands a bit more. The less moisture, the better this will all stick together. And so this is all going to get mixed up together until it's more or less homogeneous. What's interesting about the fenugreek we used is a lot of the flavors of the seeds come out once this is cooked, but the spice mix we have right here isn't actually going to be cooked. It's just going to be eaten raw along with the cooked spinach. But of course, some of the other spice mix will be cooked with Satsivi, so we will have a variety of flavors from the fenugreek. So this is going in the fridge, and the beets will be soon to follow. Here I have some pre-cooked beets, and I'm just going to break them up as much as possible and then continue to crush them. Here is our potato masher, which seems like it'll work decently well for the beets. All right, beets are well mashed up. That wasn't too difficult to do. Once they're well cooked, and now we're just gonna mix everything together. Now the beets are staining the walnuts and the spice mix, but that's ideal. Half of cooking is just presentation. Before we start the Pelamushi, we can do the first trivia question. What plant, with species found throughout the northern hemisphere, has a fruit that is categorized as a berry? It is regularly eaten both fresh and dried, and is made into juice, an alcoholic beverage, and an acidic solution. You might have been thrown off by the fact that I called it a berry. The answer is a grape, and that is the fruit that we're using next in the Pelamushi. The plant is vitis, better known as grapes. The etymology of the word vitis comes from the Proto-Indo-European for to turn, whine, or bend. So that's, of course, referring to the grapevine that winds and bends around other structures. Vitis may sound like vitality, and despite what you might feel about wine being vital for life, vitality just means life, and the origin isn't related. But grapes were, of course, very important to the Georgians, and Georgian wines are very highly regarded in Eastern Europe. We have all of these grapes. This is about 1 kilo of grapes, which is about 2 pounds. And from this, I'm expecting to get about 330 milliliters of liquid of juice. I have never tried to crush grapes in this manner. I don't think I want to use my feet, but I might have to use my fist to start off, just to pierce the grapes, get them through their skin, and then we can use the masher once they've broken down a little bit. I think my fist might be slightly more hygienic than my feet. This is like the culinary version of popping bubble wrap, the satisfaction you get from that.
Georgia is considered the birthplace of winemaking and has many indigenous grape varieties. It's said to have about 1/6 of all grape varieties in the world. Wine was originally made 8,000 years ago in clay jars, just using the yeast that's naturally occurring on the skin of the grapes. The climate conditions in Georgia are perfect for growing grapes, as the summers are nice and warm and sunny, and the winters in the valleys don't get quite to the frost level that would cause some issues for the grape production, just enough to get that right flavor.
What's great about this recipe is that since we're sieving all of the juice, it means we don't have to worry about having seedless grapes. All the seeds will be sieved out as well. So you don't have to do this step. I'm just going to measure it to get an idea of how much we got out of those grapes. And that 2 kilos of grapes gave us about 400 milliliters, so more than we were expecting. To this, we're going to heat it up, and we're going to start with half a cup of flour, which might seem a lot, but we want this pudding to be fairly thick and be ready to set without really having to put it in the fridge. All right, trivia question 2, while the grape juice is heating up. Name 3 civilizations in Age of Empires 2 that controlled land in Georgia during some point in the medieval period. So I think there's quite a few, but just try to name 3 civilizations found in Age of Empires 2 that controlled some land in Georgia, and I'll give you a few minutes to think that one over. You mentioned Persians, Saracens, and Turks. Turks, I'm not confident of. The civilizations could include Persians or Saracens, depending on the interpretation of the Arabs in the 700s. Then we have the Byzantines in the 900s, the Mongol invasions in 1240, and the Tatars under Timurid in the early 1400s. Then the main time frame for the Georgian Empire under a single central Georgian government is from 1008 to 1490, and then following the fall of Constantinople in 1453 by the Ottoman Turks and the decline of the Christian allies of the Georgians, the Georgian Empire split into 3 provinces or municipalities in 1490. So I'm going to start with half a cup, which is about 120 milliliters, about the same in grams. It smells pretty good. Definitely some grape aromas, not overly sweet. And you want this just on medium heat. I think I can even turn this down a little bit. You don't want this grape juice to be evaporating or reducing too much. Most of the change in texture will come from adding more flour. The color is very much like a light lavender rather than the darker purple I was kind of expecting. But I think it's still nice. The word for feast in Georgian is supra, which is not to be confused with the Toyota car model. And I believe the word originated and the concept originated from the Persians, which have a similar concept. But the word for supra refers to a tablecloth. So, you know, that's denoting a more official meal with customs surrounding such a meal. I'm going to add a bit more flour now. Just sprinkle a spoon on at a time. And after the final scoop of flour, you probably want to wait about 5 minutes for that last bit of flour to fully cook, so that the raw taste of the flour isn't included into the final dish. So we are going to prep the cauliflower and cook it while we're doing starting the other ingredients. I think I'm going to cut the cauliflower in half just to allow it to cook a little bit easier. While the pot of water is heating up to cook the cauliflower, we can do the third trivia question. What animal can the Georgians claim to be named after? To give you a hint, the etymology of this word originates from Persian. If you know any old Persian, maybe that'll be helpful. So the answer to the trivia question of what animal can the Georgians claim to be named after is a wolf. And people say I have a weird pronunciation of wolf because I do like a very round O, wolf, because that's how it's spelled. But English isn't a language where spelling matters sometimes. And apparently you pronounce it more with like a soft U sound, wolf, wolf. There are 2 species of canines native to the Caucasus Mountains around Georgia. The first is the gray wolf, and the second one is the golden jackal. And the Persians are the ones that named Georgia, or gave it the name of Gorgia. Georgia? I don't know the pronunciation on that. I'm going to say it's Gorgia. And it makes sense because you have a higher population of these canines in the Caucasus Mountains than you would in the homeland of the Persians on the south of the Caspian Sea, where there's a much smaller mountain range. We can get back to the cauliflower. This water is more or less heated up. So I'm going to put it in now and start the timer of 15 minutes. I'm going to do 2 onions, and we're sauteing them just like we do in so many of the recipes. And then, of course, the spice mix and the cauliflower will be added once that's all ready. The oil I'm going to use on my stainless steel is going to be olive oil. The Georgians are definitely close enough to the Mediterranean to make olive oil realistic or feasible oil, but traditionally I think they would have more likely to have used ghee. There's probably a pretty good argument for grapeseed oil given the long history of winemaking and grape growing, viticulture found in Georgia. While the onions and the garlic are sauteing, I can take the time to cut up the pomegranate the same way we did it for the Persians. That's good for the pomegranates. They're more or less peeled and ready to be used as a garnish or as a snack throughout the week. I love the community aspect of helping someone else out. It's just like that first step of like coming into contact with a person and being able to help them out is, I think, the hardest. Because in a modern sense, it's very difficult to have a community when so much is online. I mean, just this program in itself is online, but it does give somewhat of a sense of community, which I think is why I'm doing these live on Twitch as well as YouTube, because you guys can share and discuss, and it makes it a little bit harder for me to edit, but I think it's well worth it. I appreciate you guys being here for sure. So I'm going to cut the core out of the cauliflower like that, and then just dice it up into little bits so that they can be sauteed fairly easily. And I'm just going to do, pretty much a straight crisscross cut, and that should be good enough for the cauliflower. Because Georgian culture has a lot of fasting days where you don't eat any sort of animal products, there is a lot of adaptation. Also, different seasonal variations. Maybe chicken's not available. Maybe in medieval times you had some other empire that was controlling what ingredients were available to you. So yeah, you have a lot of variation in Georgian cooking, and it's great for me because it gives me a lot of opportunities to adapt based off of what I want to cook and still make it feasible for the civilization. Cauliflower was being selectively bred on the island of Cyprus in the medieval period, and it is a member of the cabbage family. I think it's like a cultivar or closely related to cabbage, but obviously you're eating the flower, the underdeveloped flower, rather than eating the leaves of the cabbage. Oh, we have to do the walnuts as well, so yeah, we need more space. So I'm going to add a bit more olive oil back into our pot and then move everything over there. There's our last round of grounding walnuts into our satsivi, and we can just mix all of that up. So the idea with the Pkhali is now that it's cold, it'll be able to set into whatever shape I form with my hands. I'll just set that right in the middle, give it a little press to get it all flat on top. This beet one is definitely less cohesive than the spinach one. It might be the beets have more water still inside of them. There we go. That looks pretty cute. Now it looks like Mr. Bean Tatar plate. Are you talking about the Mr. Bean movie where he goes to France? I haven't seen that in a long time. I just remember him speaking Spanish throughout most of his trip to France. It has a pretty good shape. Oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do. There we go. Now we have a nice even surface. And the marbling, so to call it, of the little bits of flour doesn't look too bad. Last trivia question before we get ready to eat. Cavalry are very important for Georgians historically and as part of their tech tree in Age of Empires 2. The most common gaits in order of speed are the walk, trot, pace, canter, and gallop. But what is the name of the sixth gait found in some horse breeds that is highly prized due to its ease on the rider? So very easy to move around it. The answer is the sixth gait is called the amble, which is what I'll be doing after my belly is full of this delicious Georgian food. The amble is a gait, but a little bit faster than a walk, where all of the horse's weight is placed on one foot at a time, while the other feet are in motion. And the gait is found in the Tushetian horses. That's just one of many breeds that can do the amble. And it's supposed to be easier on the rider, as I mentioned. And the Tushetian horses are well adapted to traveling through the mountainous geography of the Caucasus around Georgia. There we go. So now we have walnuts officially on everything. We have the ground walnuts in the Pkhali, in both of these. Each, that's what the lighter colored part is in the spinach one, and then it's very much hidden in the beets one because the beet juice is just so red. And then it's also in our satsivi, along with the onions and garlic, and the same spice mix is present in all three of these, but this is cooked, whereas these are partially cooked. And then we have the tiny little walnut on top with the pomegranate for reference. Oh, we didn't talk about walnuts. There are 3 different walnut species that produce edible walnuts. We have the walnuts that are found in eastern United States before they all died off or mostly died off. We have the Japanese walnut, and we have the Persian walnut. Go ahead, Abby. Enjoy.
Here, you can talk while I'm eating.
No. I'm focusing on what you taste, what you're appreciating.
Which species of walnut am I eating, sir?
I don't actually know. I'm assuming you're eating Persian walnut.
This is quite good.
Surprisingly good.
Why is this good?
Do you taste like spices? Is it fairly sweet?
It tastes like beets.
Beets mostly, yeah, that would make sense. I would say it's like 70% beet.
It's surprisingly good, not by itself.
Okay, I get that. Well, you'll take it into consideration as you taste the rest of it.
Like, surprisingly good.
Okay, good sign.
For what it is.
For the base ingredients.
For what it looks like.
Okay.
Weird.
Okay. You prefer the beet.
Mix these 2 together.
Oh, really? Okay. And then put it on like a piece of bread or something?
Make it a salad. Just turn these ingredients. Yeah, you know what? Spinach, walnuts, pomegranates, beets. Just put it in a salad.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Not this, not these like globs, but a salad. Like all the flavors are there. It's really good, but by themselves, not appealing.
Okay, that makes sense. Like I can imagine, I think people use this almost like hummus. So you could like spread it on a sandwich and then maybe just put the spinach leaves on top of the sandwich plus, I don't know, something else.
I can see that.
That is cauliflower, onions, and walnuts, of course, again. Plus the spice mix is now cooked. You think it looks disgusting because it's just generic mushiness?
It looks like
with
chicken.
It looks like chicken, okay. Yeah, I kind of get that. And it's supposed, your cauliflower is more or less replacing chicken in the dish, but it does just look like shredded chicken,
really good, though.
which is often somewhat flavorless on its own. I'm speaking based off of what I see because I haven't actually had much shredded chicken in my life.
Have you ever had shredded chicken?
I don't think so. Maybe once on accident when I was little, but I wouldn't remember it.
Poor boy.
I don't think that makes me a poor boy. And now for dessert, you have the Pelamushi, which is the grape juice freshly squeezed along with some flour. You can kind of see the consistency. This is more or less pudding-esque.
The grapes make it kind of sour.
Okay.
I don't want to eat anymore.
Okay, that's good.
I want to eat this walnut, though.
I almost feel like adding jam on top of it, like a sweeter fruit jam, would be a nice addition. Though I have no idea what the realism behind that.
You gotta try pomegranates on top of walnuts.
Yeah, that's a little tiny sandwich. Open face sandwich, of course.
Delicious.
A second walnut on top is just too much walnut. Time for rating. Execution?
8.
8 on execution. And I'm going to do something that I haven't done before. I am going to reduce your score to a 7.
Why?
Because I did a bad job sourcing the ingredients. But that's also partially because Georgian ingredients are just very hard to source since there's so many ingredients that are endemic to the region, to the Caucasus Mountains.
What did you get wrong?
The fenugreek is seeds instead of the blue fenugreek leaves that are supposed to have a different taste. The caraway seeds, it's a different species of caraway.
No, you can't reduce my rating.
Really?
Yeah.
And
what else?
You said there was something else that I did wrong, but I can't remember anymore.
Oh yeah, you set off the smoke detector.
Oh,
I already accounted.
You included the fact that I smoked off the fire alarm into the rating.
An extra point because of this mess.
Oh, I see. Okay, so 8 on execution, and then should you serve this to your girlfriend?
I would only eat 1 out of 4.
Okay.
Of these. But there's potential.
I see. So if I mix it up in a slightly different way, it could be raised from that 2.5 up to
go for like a, I don't know, maybe like a 5.
A 5.
4.
4.
Yeah, we're gonna make it a 4.
Okay, 4. Which I can understand. This is pretty different than anything else that you've experienced.
Don't get me wrong, it's good. The flavors are good. But like, if you were to serve this to me
as dinner,
yeah, I would put a pizza in the microwave.
Yes. Thank you, Abby. Enjoy.
I'm gonna take it.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. That is the end of the Georgians. Hopefully you appreciated that. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Next week will be the Celts. We have maybe some oats, maybe some porridge, maybe some beets. We'll just have to wait and see next week. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the comments.